Oh my god, it's finally here, and this is my book talk for Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. This book talk is going to contain spoilers because this is the fourth book in the series, and also it's not going to be a review as much as it's going to be my entry into the discussions that has taken place on Tumblr and Goodreads. I haven't seen a lot of discussions of the book on YouTube and Booktube. It has mostly been just reviews saying we love the book, and obviously I love the book as well, but I've heard some critiques of the book that I really want to discuss because I don't agree with them. The first thing I want to talk about is Aelin and her character in the book, because there has been a few complaints. And the first thing is whether or not she's out of character in the book. It doesn't really make sense to talk about a character being out of character in the book that is developing her character. This is a term that comes from fanfiction, and it makes sense in fanfiction because you're taking a character out of the canon. But in the canon, the character is always in character, so it doesn't really make sense. And the second thing I've seen a lot is about Aelin being compassionate. I saw this on a Tumblr post that I'm gonna link down below. Someone was talking about how they were sick of everybody bashing the critique of the book as only being about the ships, and this person realized that their problem with the book was about Aelin not being compassionate compared to the previous books, and I disagree a lot. I agree that Aelin and Selena is very compassionate. I mean, Selena was forced to be an assassin, but she still tried to be as compassionate about it as possible. But in this book, she's very compassionate as well. I think why it might seem like she's less compassionate is because she's not really focused on Chaol and Dorian in this book. Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, she is focused only on Chaol and Dorian and a little bit on Nehemia, while in Air of Fire she is focused on Rowan. In this book she has more female friends, she also has a kingdom to look forward to, and she has her cousin as well, and she has her people that she's trying to look out for. So she's very compassionate. In this blog post, the person who wrote it talked about how they didn't think she was compassionate because she wasn't nice to Chaol, and I disagree. I think she's very nice to Chaol in this book, but being compassionate and nice does not mean being stepped all over. She doesn't have to take his shit. He literally calls her a monster, and being compassionate does not entail that you just have to take that lying down. And she's very compassionate towards Dorian as well. She's trying to kill him because that is what she would want if she was in his position. So I think she's very compassionate towards him as well. But she just had more people to think about, and they're not her primary focus, as they shouldn't be. In this book she's trying to be queen, and she's trying to rebuild her kingdom and gather her people. And Dorian and Chaol is not part of her people. They're not really the people she's responsible for, and therefore not her primary concern in this book. Another discussion has been whether or not she's a queen in this book, and I think that's a bit misguided because she's not a queen. That's to be a queen you need a people and you need a country. In this book she kind of has a people. Her people is scattered throughout the kingdom, but she doesn't really have a country until the last 10 pages, so she's not a queen. But I think the discussion is about whether or not she's queenly, and again this kind of went back to whether or not she was nice to Chaol and Dorian, and a queen doesn't have to be nice. Why should she waste her time on him? So I think she's very queenly, but there's one thing where I think she's not as queenly as she is in her interactions with Chaol and Dorian, and that is with regards to the secrets she keeps from her court, and she goes out on missions without telling them. And if she was a queen, she wouldn't try to do everything herself. She would delegate the tasks she has to do, and would include the people she needs to help her with the tasks she has to do. I think Sarah J. Maas has been brilliant so far at character development, and obviously no one is just naturally born to be a queen. So this is one of the things she'll learn as she goes along, and I can't wait to see it. And now to the thing that has most people hating on this book, the ships. I'm gonna start with Dorian and then go to Rowan, and then at last talk about Chaol. Dorian is not someone I've ever shipped Aelin with. A lot of people seem to have accepted that Dorian and Aelin is not going to be endgame. The reasons why I never shipped them is because Dorian is the former prince and now the king of the country that conquered Aelin's country. So politically it was never going to work. It's very common for princes and princesses to get married across borders for political reasons, but when one country has conquered another, it would just be a slap in the face of the people who have been tortured and thrown into concentration camps to marry the son of the king who actually did this to them. So I don't think English people would ever accept them together, even if they liked each other romantically, which I don't think they do. I think they're great friends, but I don't think they're gonna be romantically involved. As to Rowan and Aelin, I shipped them from the start. From the moment we met Rowan and till the end of Era 5, I kept hoping. It was kind of destroyed my hope because they kept saying, no, it's not gonna happen and we're not interested in each other like that. But you could see how in Era 5 they grew closer and closer and closer together. And for me, this book seemed like a natural extension of that, how they grew and grew together. A lot of people talking about how it was very sudden. And if you see the reunion of the two as now they're together, then yes, it's very sudden. But it's not. I mean, the rooftop scene where Aelin comes on to Rowan and he rejects her and then later apologizes and accepts her, that's really where they get together. And before that, they were just very, very tight friends. Even though they were a bit touchy with each other, it was still friendship. So I think that was halfway through the book, so it wasn't really that sudden. But it was still a growing relationship, and I think they're still growing, and I think they're cute together. To the last character and the most controversial ship, Chaol and Celaena. And after I talk about the ship, I'm gonna briefly talk about Chaol's character in this book, so stay tuned. Nope, okay. I never shipped them together, and I have a few reasons for that. And the first of that is that I never really liked Chaol. He is a very judgmental character, and he was so blindly loyal to the king that he condemned Celaena from the start. I've seen a lot of people talking about how Chaol was in love with parts of Celaena and he's not ready for Aelin, and I agree with the division of the two, as Maas has talked about as well, how Celaena was a role that Aelin played in order to survive, but at the same time, I don't think that Chaol actually was in love with Celaena. He was in love with Lillian. He wanted this sweet and beautiful girl that he could protect, and that's not really who Celaena was, and it's definitely not who Aelin is. The second reason why I didn't really ship them together at all is because Chaol is not really important. It was clear to me from the beginning that this story was going to be bigger than just Celaena. When we found out that she was the lost queen of, I'm not going to try and pronounce her kingdom's name, I knew that she was never going to be with Chaol. It didn't really make sense for a queen of a newly re-established kingdom to marry a minor noble of the kingdom that conquered hers. So I always considered Celaena and Chaol to be incompatible politically, but also personally. A lot of people have been talking about how Maas slaughtered Chaol's character in this book in order to end the ship. And like I said, I've never really shipped them, but I also disagree about her slaughtering Chaol's character, because for me, he's starting to redeem himself in this book, and for me, he wasn't really that different. A lot of people seemed shocked that he called Celaena a monster and that he was very judgmental, but he's always been like that. The difference is not so much Chaol as it is Aelin. Yes, Chaol has been separated from his king and is now a rebel, even though he took his loyalty really seriously. But Aelin doesn't really take his crap anymore. Before this book, she kind of played along and hid all of her more violent sides from him, but in this book, she doesn't really have time for that, and obviously they're gonna clash. I mean, that was clear from the beginning. But in this book, Chaol is a bit more bendable in his views. He's a bit more open to magic. He still has this double standard and is very hypocritical about it, saying that Aelin's magic is wrong, but Dorian's is fine, even though Dorian's magic is more dangerous and more powerful, so that's just hypocrisy and very Chaol thing actually. But he's trying to redeem himself, and he's a bit more considerate of others' morality, and also a bit more open to changing his morality. So for me, this was a good book for Chaol, because I actually started to like him a bit. Same for Dorian. Before this book, I thought he was really boring, but in this book, he's a bit more exciting. And the last thing I want to talk about is the awesome female characters. And a lot of people have been talking about this, because how could you not? And I'm gonna talk about first Lysandra, and then Nesrin, and then the witches. Lysandra, all of the love for her. I mean, everybody loves her, of course they do. When she turned into a snow leopard, yes, that was so badass, it was amazing. The decision that Maas made to let Lysandra kill Arobynn instead of Aelin was a really good decision, because as she said, it was a way for Aelin to heal herself, to distance herself, and said, I'm over this, and Arabin doesn't mean as much to me as he did. At the same time, it was a gift of friendship to Lysandra to say, here you can kill the bastard who tortured you and raped you for years. And at the same time, it was great for Lysandra to be able to finish that part of her life. So that was great. Yes, more of that. And then there's Nesrin. And I really like the addition of her character into the series because there really more female characters. I'm always a slut for that. I just, yes, give me more. At the same time, for me, even though she's good friends with Aelin and she's a very good soldier in many ways, she's also a bridge between Chaol and Aelin. Because as it has been said many times, Chaol doesn't really know how to relate to Aelin. He doesn't really know her because he had this idealized version of Selena. So for him and Aelin to interact is very awkward. But Nesrin is very similar to Aelin and in some ways can communicate with both of them, so she's able to bridge that gap. And for me, Nesrin was a big part of what redeemed Chaol's character in this book. The fact that he can be nice. And then to the witches. I really loved Manon in this book. I really loved how she's growing as a leader and as a woman, and how she's beginning to be able to show her compassion towards the people under her care, but also to her dragon and to people around her. I love how the witches are man killers and how they have so much disdain for the Duke and for the King and for everybody. And I've seen a lot of people ship Manon with Dorian, and I can see it, and I think the book kind of plays that out a little bit. But I hope she does that with him. For me, I want her to end with Eli. I ship Manon and Eli together because I think they would work really well together. I think Manon encourages Eli to be a bit more hardcore and confident in herself and a bit more dangerous, whereas I think Eli encourages Manon to be a bit more compassionate, and I think they complement each other really well. So I hope their relationship really is built upon in the next few books. Thank you for watching my book talk. I hope to see what you think in the comments down below, and otherwise I'll see you next time. Goodbye! Also, I just want to show you, if you can see it, my shirt. It says, you could rattle the stars. I thought I would wear it. So, yes!